as the Assistant Purchasing Agent for the City of Knoxville, has a bachelor's degree from the University of Phoenix, and a CPPO certification. Way to go. Penny is a member of TAP, ETPA, and NIGP. She serves as TAP's ETPA's co-webmaster and co-trade show chair, TAP's past president and nominating committee chair, which should we call him?
Woohoo! Yeah, watch out if I call.
Yeah. Serves on NIGP's consulting team managed by Periscope. She is also an NIGP chapter ambassador for Area 3, which includes Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Ontario. She's been on the road a lot. She is a native of Michigan. Please don't hold that against her. We do anyway. But came to her senses and has been in Knoxville since 1988. Penny lives near downtown Knoxville with her son Dale and 2 fur babies. 2? Yep. I just saw a picture of one.
Oh yeah, we have a cat too. I have a 100-pound Great Dane dog, so he's a mess. His name's Cornelius. He's a big dog. He needed a big name. He's a rescue. Yeah, he's a mess.
She's got a video.
And I have a great big crate that he lives in.
On behalf of
Yeah.
Vanderbilt fans, we appreciate that name.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Abby. So, 2 thought friends of mine recommended that we do a session on solicitation. So, requirements, language for federal and state solicitations. I will caveat that with, I'm really strong in the federal side. I'm a little weak on the state side, but I've pulled some resources and came up with some things. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And so how many people get money from the feds? Who gets grant money? All right. What about from the state?
Pretty much the same people. Much anymore,
Yeah.
do we?
No, not really.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, there's not much coming so much.
What about from the state?
Anymore. So with that, as you know, you get these wonderful grant documents that come from the granting agency, and there's all sorts of requirements. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Things like the clauses that have to go in, vendor status, you have to make sure they're certified, registered with SAM, all sorts of things like that. Reporting, there's all sorts of reporting requirements that come with that money, and time deadlines too, of course. Of course, with the state grant funds, they're pretty similar to the feds. A lot of times, a lot of the federal stuff has rolled down because the state gets money from the federal government. I know, like with our ICAC contracts or the ICAC money that we get from the state, it's come from the feds, so some of that rolls down. One thing I want to point out just right off the bat, and I don't want to get into a whole lot of, we're going to hear about uniform guidance tomorrow, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that, the 2 CFR 200. The feds have supposedly made everything all nice and uniform. The more I've dug into this and the more we learn about it, and the more I've talked to other people, the really uniform part of that is that they've taken multiple circulars that we had to follow. So like A133 for the accounting side of the house, our piece of it. They've put them all in that uniform guidance. But as you read the procurement requirements, there are requirements in that, but you've got to know what your agency is requiring, the granting authority. Because there's all sorts of, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but there's all sorts of discussion about thresholds and what is really the small threshold. So we'll talk about that, but that's why I marked that kind of as a best practice. Know what your granting authority is requiring from you with those documents. And I put an example. So like we get FTA money, we get quite a bit of that because we have a transit center. We get a lot of HUD money. 2 totally different requirements when it comes to that. Kind of a quick question too. So in your agencies, do you manage those grant documents or do you let your departments that are getting the money manage those? You have a grant coordinator? So you have it centralized. How many have it centralized like that? 2. The rest of us don't, right? And so we don't necessarily. We have what's called a grant manager in finance, and so she is responsible to keep track of what's going on with payments and money flowing back and forth and all that. But our departments really manage those grants. We have some oversight and we've centralized a piece of the reporting, but we let them do that. But hopefully with our oversight. So it's kind of interesting to talk about that. Next thing I've got on there is go with the most stringent requirements. And we'll talk about this tomorrow, I'm sure, with uniform guidance as well. Uniform guidance says that the small purchase threshold now, micro threshold for the feds is $3,000. So anything over $3,000, you've got to do some type of a procurement process. For us at the city of Knoxville, it's $5,000. So when we are using federal money like that, we've got to go with the lower threshold with the $3,000. So that's, and you'll run into that too. So like the feds don't require a formal solicitation until you get to $150,000. Well, that's nice. We're at 25. And so you've got to, you really need to stick with the most stringent. And really, if you look at some of the requirements in uniform guidance, they say, go with your state laws, especially go with whatever's the most stringent practice. So don't violate law, going with the easier restriction. So we'll start off with federal.
Penny, wouldn't the general rule, based on what you said, be that you can be more stringent than the federal
Yes.
requirement? You just can't be more flexible
Right,
than the requirement
right. That's true.
of what they.
Yep. Yeah. But, you know, if we went with the federal of 150,000, then we'd be violating our state law. Right. Okay, so clauses to include, and let me caveat this by, we'll talk about a lot of different clauses. This is not a catch-all. These are examples of ones that, and some of the more common ones that have to go in most solicitations that you do with federal money. And sometimes there will be thresholds, and that may vary by agency again. So right back to what I said at the very beginning, know what your granting authority requires.
How do you find that out, Penny? Is there a form they have?
It's in the grant.
I
Well,
mean, that's pulling teeth.
yeah, I'm going to talk about that. There's actually,
Okay,
most of them
good.
have something on their website, so
Good.
we'll talk about that. So we'll talk about clauses, and then we'll also talk about kind of requirements, considerations that you also have to do that aren't necessarily a clause. How to find the clauses. As Debbie asked, how do you know, the clicker's falling apart, which ones you have to include? Most of the agencies, HUD, FTA, DOE, DOD, whichever, they, on their website, they typically have a procurement manual or something of that nature on their website that lists all the clause requirements. They don't, I think most of them, they don't necessarily print out the full clause for you, but rather they reference something in the federal code. So you'll see a lot of federal code, like the CFRs. You'll notice like FTA, they have they actually have their own circular. It's 4220.1.f. And that's on their website, and you can go to that and find the clauses. An example of a clause matrix in your handouts there, I gave you the slides, and I also included, this is something our maintenance officer for our transit center is awesome at this. He loves digging in this stuff. He'll call me, hey, have you seen this? Read this. Let me read this to you. And I love him. He is so awesome. But he, with kind of the help of our previous assistant purchasing agent, Janice McClellan, developed this clause matrix and a checklist that we use on our FTA procurements. So if you look at that, it kind of lists, and it has thresholds, so you know when you have to insert the clause. So that's really helpful if you have the time and you've got somebody that can kind of dig into that. But he did that, going to that 4220 circular and reading through and building this matrix. So when we do that type of procurement, we know what to include. Yeah, it's in your handouts. Did you not get handouts?
No.
Here, honey.
All right, good enough.
Here.
There you go.
Here.
Oh,
It's right there.
thank you.
It's a checklist. Okay. So
Sorry.
I'm going to go. Oh, you're fine. I'm going to go through some of the example clauses that are included here that we're going to talk about. And this one's okay. I'm a geek, so I think this is kind of fun that there's this weird difference. We have Buy American and we have Buy America, and that N makes a big difference. So both are domestic preferences for construction materials used on public projects. So we want to buy American on construction projects. Buy American, actually both of them really, require that unless you get a waiver from the agency. So if we're buying, we're building a building for our transit authority for CAT, then maybe there's some light ballast or something that we want to put in and they're not made here. Then we might have to get a waiver from FTA saying that we can buy those. Buy America, so Buy American is typically on pretty much most of the agencies, all the DOEs, the DODs, all the civilian and defense. Buy America is different, and it is with FTA, FAA, and Federal Highway, FHWA. And it's a little more stringent. We have run into, we were actually doing that. We were building a new transit center. We had some lights that we were putting in, and the screws in those lights were made in China. And they were telling us we couldn't do that. So, yeah. Well, because you're a contractor then, if you're doing Buy America, if that's a requirement, you have to have your contractor do a certification that you have to have in your file, because if FTA comes knocking, they want to see that says, yes, we certify that all of these products are made in America. Yeah, and it does apply to rolling stock as well, although it's a little less stringent for the transit piece. So if you're buying buses, we're in the process right now of buying electric buses. So that's been a big piece of that proposed RFP that we have out right now. But just be aware, there are two different things there, Buy American versus Buy America. And there will be different requirements based on which one you use.
Sandy,
Yes, ma'am.
does school nutrition not require a Buy America thing?
Don't know, it might.
Ours does.
Yeah.
Does it?
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Because most of the orange juice this year was not in America, so we don't serve orange juice in our
Okay.
schools this year because of that.
So they have, so your contractors for that then would have to certify that it's all American made. Yeah. That's good to have.
Probably Mexico or something.
Are you?
Mexico would make sense.
I'm sorry. She was talking about school nutrition. So if you're buying food for the, yeah, I don't have to worry about that either, but. Okay, any other questions on that? Okay. Davis-Bacon. So if you are building, if you have a public works contract that's funded with federal funds, you have to include a Davis-Bacon clause. What that is it's prevailing wages, basically. So you have to agree, and your contractor has to agree to pay your laborers and everybody on site at a certain rate. Again, required on all construction, repairs, and alterations over $2,000. So it really kicks in at a very low rate. With that, you need to include probably in your solicitation and as well as in your contract, a copy of the wage determination. And we'll kind of talk about that. So what that is if you go to Department of Labor website, you can pull a wage determination for the type of construction and for the area that you're in, where you're doing the construction. I'm giving you the website. It's at dol.gov. You can search for the determination. You can search by state, county, and then the type of construction. And then your contractor, as you're doing the work, once you've got a contract in place, they will have to provide you certified payrolls. And you need to look at those, or somebody in your organization has to review those to make sure that they are paying in accordance to those laws.
Bless you.
A couple other things with Davis-Bacon. If you have Davis-Bacon on a project, you have to have signs posted on the site that say Davis-Bacon applies so that the workers are aware. And you're required also to go out and actually interview them just periodically. It's a couple spot checks, but you have to go talk to the workers and make sure they are aware of Davis-Bacon and that it has to be, that they should be getting paid at a certain rate.
And they say yes because they don't want to lose their job.
So this is kind of the website. I pulled up just kind of the search website so you can see, and I know that's probably hard to see, but you've got it in your handouts. But if you look right, so you click up here where it says Davis-Bacon Act, click selecting DBA WDs, and then down here in the search, you can search by Tennessee. I did Knox County building. It pops up my WD number, which is 1001. and you click search, and this is kind of what it would look like. That's a sample wage determination. You can put that whole thing in your solicitations if you want to, or you can just pull the wage rates out and stuff. But you can see it also includes not just the rates, but also includes the fringes that they have to pay.
So what do you recommend putting in the solicitation?
I would put,
reference? Or do you put the
no,
rates?
I'd put the actual
You know,
wage
we don't, but
determination.
we get a lot of phone calls.
I know.
Rates.
Yeah.
So I guess we need to.
Yeah,
figure that
it
out
just makes it
ahead of time.
easier if you put it in
You're
there.
right.
That way you don't
Put
have
it in
to.
now or 20
Yep.
questions on it.
And it probably doesn't hurt to post that on your job site too with the, the notice that you have to post. Yep.
Then they're like,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Yes, Brian.
This is a dumb question, I'm sure.
No,
How did you know that your WD number was TN93?
It popped up.
I see, so
Yep, right down here.
you
When I put
filled
my
in Tennessee, Knox, and construction type building,
Yes,
and then
and
it
it filled it in
automatically
for me.
populated?
And you can put in, so in the construction type, you have like building there, but there's also heavy construction. So if you were doing maybe a big federal road job or something like that, I don't know that any of us would ever do that, but there's heavy construction as well. So there are different categories of the type of construction. And so if I had chosen heavy instead of just regular building, it would come up with a different wage number. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. The Byrd Amendment, anti-lobbying. Your contractors have to certify that they will not lobby anybody in Congress or us or anybody to get work, basically. So they have to certify that they will not contact anybody to do that. That really only, well, for most of them, I think it only kicks in at 100,000. Debarment and suspension. So the feds don't want you to use contractors that have been debarred by the federal government. And in my former life, we actually had a vendor that got debarred because they were falsifying invoices. And we found out, and they got turned into the federal government, and they got debarred, and they could no longer do business. So it says you have to verify that on contracts over 25,000. I know with our FTA stuff, we do it on all of them for the most part, just because it's, it's a good practice. You really shouldn't probably be doing business even locally with somebody that's been debarred by the federal government. To see that, you go to sam.gov. Does everybody know about sam.gov? Anybody? No? Okay, if you don't, okay. So sam.gov is I forgot what it stands for. It'll come to me. I think it's it's System Award Management or something like that. The federal government runs SAM, and it's fed somewhat by the SBA as well, the Small Business Administration. So sam.gov, when you go there, you can search for a vendor. You can search for their name. You can search by a DUNS number, all sorts of different searches. They have an advanced search, which you can click on, and you can search by the city. So you can see like all vendors registered with the federal government. And if you do that, when you're doing that search, you can click it defaults to just active vendors, but I would click on the inactive too, because people forget to re-register in SAM, and so they don't show up. So with SAM, you also have to, this is kind of a snapshot. This is what it looks like if you pull up the city of Knoxville. If you are going to do business with a government or with a vendor and you're using federal funds, you need to have a snapshot of this in your file to prove that they were an active vendor and not debarred at that time when you did business with them. Okay, so honestly, we forget. But if FTA, HUD, whoever comes in to look at your records, they're going to say, did you check to make sure they're not debarred? So this is a quick and easy way to make sure they're not debarred. Let me go back. And I think I've got more about SAM. We'll talk a little bit more about sam.gov because you also, as a local agency, you also have to be registered in sam.gov to receive federal funds. And I'm not sure who might do that for your agencies, because if you're getting federal money, you are registered in SAM.
Typically, it's your grants department because
Yep.
to be able to register at grants.gov, you
Yep.
have to register at SAM, which
Yes,
you're right, that's System Awards.
yes,
You have an acronym.
yes. Yeah, and that's what we've done at the city. I'm actually the person that keeps up with sam.gov. We've kind of centralized that in purchasing. I don't know why. But what's happened to us in the past is we had like the police department would register, and then community development might register, and we had accounts all over the place. And then we didn't have the right DUNS number. It was just a mess. So that's why we've kind of centralized that.
Yeah, Janet Brewer is
Yes.
registered for KPD.
Yes, I
I
know.
know that we do the JAG grant together.
I know. But yeah, we've told her not to do that anymore. So anyway, but you do have to have that. You will get asked that if you go to apply for a grant. Is your SAM registration active? And they'll want to see a screenshot that shows that it is still active. You have to renew it every year. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too, because I've got more stuff on that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And is there a charge for that?
No, it's free.
Because we got these crazy emails.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
And I thought, I'm sure we
Yes.
have not paid for this in the
No,
past.
you don't. And this started happening a couple years ago. I do this registration every year. It's free. It takes 5 minutes. It doesn't take 6 weeks for it to renew. It takes like 5 hours at most. But we've gotten their phishing emails basically. They're scam emails. People will email you and say, "Oh, your SAM registration expires in 6 months
Right.
for a
Warning,
fee."
warning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, no.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to apply for grants. You need to get with us and we will help you do that. Yeah, for a fee. But why do that when you can just log onto the system? And I mean, it's really simple to do that. So yes,
Okay.
don't fall for those. You don't need that to re-register in SAM. Okay. Prompt payment. So the feds like you to put a prompt payment clause in your contracts. And basically what this says is you will pay within 30 days. Well, I'm sorry. It says that your contractors will pay any subs within 30 days of their receipt of payment from us. So it's a way to make sure, one, of course, that the contractor's getting paid, but that the subs are getting paid. The feds want that prompt payment clause. Of course, we include, performance bonds and payment bonds to make sure that happens as well. But this is, we've been taught, so with FTA, we get to have a nice visit from them every 3 years. And they come see us and they like to look through all our files, especially the bigger contracts that we've done. And so this is our year for our triennial review. And this is one of the things we've been kind of given a heads up is that they're really going to be looking at prompt payment this year. To the point that our CAP folks have even kind of developed a new form to go to the contractor and certify, yes, you are paying your subs on time. So you've got clauses for that, so we don't discriminate. Whistleblower protection. So the feds have a hotline. So if there's a problem, you can call and say, hey, problem's going on here. So there is a whistleblower protection for folks that do that. Termination clause. Of course, hopefully you all have a termination clause in your contract anyway. We have a really good one, and we can get out of it for just about anything we want to. But the feds require, of course, that you have a termination clause. Copeland anti-kickback. That's a federal law that's been on the books for years. You can't be getting kickbacks from your contractors, so don't be doing it. Ignore Lynn. And one thing I added, prohibition of cardinal changes. I'm not sure how many of the different agencies do have that in their clauses. I've seen it in a couple. FTA is really big on that, and we run into that a lot when we buy buses as a perfect example. So say we buy a bus, we have a spec, and we want this bus, and we want these kinds of seats, and these kinds of this chassis, and we want this motor, and we want these windows. I mean, you build a bus. Well, So say it's a year later and we've got a term agreement with somebody, so we can buy buses for the next 5 years from them. But things have changed a little bit. Maybe we need a different wheelchair lift. Maybe our radios, our communications have changed, or our videos are changing, video cameras. You have to be really careful to make sure that that change in that spec doesn't create what's called a cardinal change, which means if we were to go back out to bid, we might get a totally different price, and we should go back out because it's such a change that it really changes what we're buying, that we're no longer really buying bus A, we're now buying bus B. And so you would have to put that back out. Same thing with other, it wouldn't just necessarily be on transit either. You could be speccing out a software system. Maybe you're looking for an email system. If you change completely your scope, then that becomes a cardinal change, and you really have to go back out. You can't continue on with that one. So that's one to be real careful with. Any other questions so far on clauses? All right. So this is where we're going to talk about kind of more of the certifications that are required, and reporting requirements, things like that on your federal money. So we're back to SAM. As I said, we touch on that again, but I think we've kind of talked about this. I've got the caution on there. You will get emails saying, hey, we can register you in SAM. Don't do it. You can just log on, click a couple buttons to renew, and it's done. So don't fall for those. We talked about kind of centralizing that, so you have one person that does it. Have to have the active registration. And one thing, so your subrecipients. So say you have federal grant funds, we get money for like community development. And we then have subrecipients on that because we want them to do a piece of the program. Say we have a program for homelessness and we want them to manage something, or we've got case managers. We want them to develop a program and hire case managers. They also have to be registered in SAM. You have to make sure they're in there and that they have a DUNS number, because you have to have a DUNS number to register in SAM. Does everybody know what a DUNS number is? Okay, we get on that. And those are free. You can get a free DUNS number from Dun & Bradstreet. Again, log on, put a bunch of information in there. Okay. No, it's not Vanilla Ice. ICE is an independent cost estimate. Ice, baby. So you have to have an independent cost estimate in your on file with your solicitation anytime you purchase something over $100,000. Some of the agencies really look for that. I know FTA is really strong on that one. I think internally we actually do it if we're over our formal threshold. So if we've hit the $25,000 mark, we go ahead and put an independent cost estimate in there. And it's also required if you're using federal money and you're doing a sole source purchase. You've got to have a cost estimate in there as well. Lease versus purchase determination, and this will pop up tomorrow with uniform guidance. That requirement's kind of always been in there in the federal regs, but with uniform guidance, that's going to become, you got to have a lease versus purchase determination. So if you're buying something that you could lease, so if you're going to buy cars, I guess potentially, with federal money, then you would need to do a lease versus purchase analysis to make sure you're getting the best value. Subrecipient versus contractor. So, and this was a huge debate. I don't know, how did any of you get recovery money? The good old ARA times back in 2009. We had a huge debate about this when we got the ARA money, because subcontractor versus subrecipient versus contractor, they're treated differently. So if you have a subrecipient, basically they are agreeing to take on a piece of the program that you've got federal funds for, and they're going to act like you in performing that piece of the program. So all those requirements flow down to the subrecipient. So in your agreement with the subrecipient, you have to flow down all those grant requirements to them. Vendor's a little different. A vendor, you're just going to hire them to go out and maybe you're just gonna buy something from them. So we're putting in a new big something to help people out, and we're gonna buy computers for that. Buying those computers from them, they're just a vendor, and they don't have to go through all the flow down requirements that are in the grant. So why do we care about this? Why do we want to know? There are other reasons, but there's this wonderful thing called FFATA. Does anybody know what FFATA is? Does anybody do FFATA reporting? Where did Hugh go? He left. Okay, so as of October in 2010, the federals have what's called the Federal Funding, Accountability, and Transparency Act. And this kind of emerged out of ARA. When we did ARA, when we got all that money, there was additional reporting requirements in addition to what your agency, your granting agency required. So what this does is it wants you to report everything that you subaward that is more than $25,000. So if you've got a grant from, say, from HUD, and it's for this homeless program, and you're going to assign $28,000 to an agency to do a piece of that program work for you, you have to report that to the feds on a system it's fsrs.gov. And that's in addition to HUD's regular system that they use, because they have a system also that you do like quarterly reports and you spent how much you're spending and so forth. But it's a one-time thing. When you make the award, you have until the end of the month following your award to do the report on FSRS. But anything you subaward over $25,000, you have to report on that website. If you award something and it's only $20,000, you don't have to report it at that time. However, if you go back and do an addendum and decide, ooh, we need them to do a little bit more work, let's give them another $10,000. Well, now you're up to 30, and now you've got to report it. And any additional addendums after that, you would have to report that. So what we have done, we've centralized this. Our contract manager is actually responsible for this. Bless her heart. She inherited that from me. Yay. But the reason it made sense to us to centralize it with her is because when our contracts come through for signature, so when we're doing subawards agreements, they come through us before they go to our finance director for signature. And we add them to the system, do a purchase order, we have a database and so forth. So it made sense for her to do it because she's that central point, contract's gonna run through there, and she can do the reporting. And that's why you have to know the difference between a subrecipient and a contractor, because on the contractors, you don't have to report them in FFATA, but you do your subrecipients.
As a general rule of thumb, Penny and I work together, as a general rule of thumb, your nonprofits are gonna be your subrecipients in general.
Yeah.
Not always, but in general. Your for-profits are gonna be subcontractors to the subrecipient. So again, what she's saying, the flow down requirements go to the subrecipient. And I make that determination when I send over to the law department. So it's put into the subrecipient agreement as opposed to a subcontract.
Sounds easy enough.
Sounds easy enough?
No.
We actually have a checklist on our contract.
You'd have to, this is.
Yeah, so that we remember to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, any questions on that? We'll keep going. Record retention. So the feds say you have to keep your records for 3 years after the end of your contract. And they're actually, I know with the federal government, they have a full-blown closeout process that they go through. I know our local, we have to keep ours at least 7 years. So I'm pretty sure we still have some of those records from ARA. We've kept those just because.
I think we actually keep everything 10 years, don't we?
No, remember we
5
got it
years
changed.
there, but then 5
No.
downstairs.
Remember Janet got it changed.
I remember she updated it.
I don't know if we're following it. We may still be keeping it 10.
We'll keep them a long time.
We do.
When did that change?
I don't remember. I think it was last year. I'll have to look. Because I think she went through some process to, I think it went to council. I don't know. Anyway, but at a minimum, at least make sure you keep anything with federal money on it at least 3 years
After it's closed.
after it's closed. And the caveat on that is if something comes up, so like if litigation was to pop up on that, at that point, your 3 years is out the window. You're going to keep it now until you get through whatever that process. So if you're at 2 years and 11 months, too bad. You got to keep it.
Does scanning count as
Yes.
retention?
Yes. Yes. At least at the federal level. Not so sure about our personal local level, but yes, feds are good with scanned documents. So let's move into state. Well, first, let me say, any other questions on federal money that I haven't covered? I know, it's a boring subject, I'm sorry. Okay, so state, and again, I'm making that caveat, I don't know that much about state funding because we get TDOT and maybe a little TDEC, and I think we get some ICAC money, but that's about it. So, so similar to federal, of course, they have requirements. And again, get that grant document. I know a lot of people, you got grant managers and they're like, we don't need that. Why does purchasing need that? Well, you do, because there are requirements in there that affect your purchasing. And so you do need to get copies of those grant documents. Who was it? Who was telling me last night they had to pull teeth to get them? Was it you? Yeah, we do. And as I said, a lot of this is based on my experience with TDOT. So if you have better experiences and you want to share, chime right in. Okay, so clauses to add. So again, these are three. So you've got the Federal Immigration and Nationality Act. Says that you will not use, I'm sorry, I can't talk, illegal immigrants on projects. You have to get the I-9s and have those. Debarment and suspension, just like the feds. The state wants to make sure that you're not using somebody that's been debarred. And with the state, I know especially like with TDOT, I think they have their own system as well. So you have to check both. Non-discrimination in employment, just like the feds, we don't want to discriminate against anybody. So it's, your standard language there. Prevailing wages. So I'm going to talk primarily road work because there's a difference there. So prevailing wages, it's in TCA 12.4.4. You have to insert, again, you should insert the current wages into your solicitation and your subsequent contract. But now that only applies right in the state to road work. The vertical build was, I'm trying to remember when that legislation passed. It's been, do you remember, boys?
About 3 years.
About 3 years
maybe
ago?
4 years
Yeah.
ago.
That you no longer have to do it on vertical build. It's on
In fact,
vertical.
if you want to do it,
You
I don't
can.
know where you get the rates from. The state no longer has them.
Yep.
So, I don't know where you go, other than the Davis-Bacon Act, I don't know where you're going to get them from.
Yeah, there are.
I've been told that Memphis, Shelby County puts something together sometimes. I don't know where you get it from.
But if you are doing road work, there are wages available on the website, on the tn.gov website. And I will tell you something, the state of Tennessee website drives me bonkers. So I don't know if y'all know, and we'll talk about Iran divestment in a few minutes, but they gave us a link for that. I think we've had 2 different ones so far. And every time they update that list, they change the link. It's like, don't do that, because then your form doesn't work. So if you can't find it at that link, if it changed, because I think, well, this actually goes to like a prevailing wage website now. So hopefully that will stay the same. And the 2018 wages are posted on there. But if nothing else, go to tn.gov and type in prevailing wages, and you should be able to find it. Bonds, of course, we all know, hopefully, we all know you have requirements for bonding, 5% bid bonds, 5% of their bid price, and then performance and payment bonds, which you'll talk about. Once your legislation, didn't that Or was that last year we did that? When did we do that?
It wasn't this year.
Okay, because it used to be, I think it said it's a minimum of, well, it used to say the performance and payment bonds were 25% of the,
Right.
and in practice, we were all using 100%. So it does now say you have to use at least a minimum of 25% of the contract price for your performance and payment bonds. Pre-qualified vendors and licensing. So vendors bidding on TDOT projects have to be registered with TDOT, have to be certified by TDOT. There's a whole process they have to go through. This website shows where the vendors list is, but it also has links on there for vendors to get registered with TDOT. Boyce and I had this conversation yesterday, and we kind of talked about this. So when you get your envelopes in for a TDOT project, you really need to, before you ever open them, go to the website and go verify that these vendors are all on the list.
You can't ask for contractors and licensing on the outside.
Correct, that's the next one, yeah. And that said though, about the being registered, being certified with TDOT, I think we've had a situation where we had one that was in the process of getting registered. And so our local TDOT office said, you can allow that bid.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're not on the list. They're
When you-
supposed to
Not on the
check.
list.
When you dig down, when you start talking with actual TDOT, you explain the situation, I can tell you what's gonna happen. TDOT will tell you, as long as they've put in for it. Here's the bottom line. TDOT just says you gotta be pre-qualified with TDOT before you can do the contract work, before the contract
By
is fully
award.
executed.
Yep.
Goodness.
Now, where do you draw the cut line?
Right.
Usually we draw it on,
Yeah, because you
at
could
first
go through the
blush,
process
we
and
draw it
then not
on,
get approved.
are you pre-registered, or are you pre-qualified or not? Go to the website. If not, you're over here in the leave it alone pile.
Right,
But
right.
if they start raising the stink in the leave it alone pile, and then you gotta get back with TDOT, I'm just letting you know, TDOT will
You're
make an
okay with it.
exception and say,
Right.
no, as long as they're putting in for it, you're okay. And then that delays everything,
Yep.
a big
And
mess.
on our side, that doesn't work. If they're a state licensed contractor, whereas let's say it's a project, nothing to do with this money.
Yep.
It can't be that they've applied for a state license.
Oh, no, see, that's,
They gotta
yeah,
have
that's
that.
the difference.
That's
So the
the
rules are
difference, yeah.
different. Very
Yeah, if it's
for
just
us,
a regular
it's not
construction
about
thing, you gotta
money.
have
Yeah.
a licensing classification
Yes,
on
on
there,
the outside.
subcontractors on there,
Yes.
everything's gotta be tight. You
Yep.
can't be putting in for it, you got to have it, and it's gotta be on there. But TDOT, it's.
Yeah, if it's TDOT
it's not
money,
the
then
same.
it's different. And same thing, that's what Debbie was alluding to next, is that next bullet. So in our world, if we're using our money for construction project, we have to have the license number on the outside. We have to have the subs listed with their licenses. TDOT does not. If it's a TDOT funded project and we're opening it, that information does not have to be on the outside of the envelope. Yeah. I don't know why. They're special. All right. Drug-free and IRAN divestment. So all of our contracts with state funding, we have to have a certification from the vendor that says they do have a drug-free program in accordance with the state of Tennessee drug-free workplace program. IRAN divestment, that came to be 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I can't remember now, says that we can't do businesses with companies that are on the list that have a basis in Iran. So we can't do business with companies. Yes, Andy. Question?
Okay, on that,
Yes.
it says that if you do business or you spend over $1,000.
Yep.
You have to have a form.
Yes.
Is that everybody we do business with, or is that strictly state funded?
The way the state law reads, I think it's everybody we do business with. But I know we're not doing it like on our P card purchases. Or we have, I think it says
The word is
solicitation.
solicitation,
Yes.
and I am taking that, and my legal source takes that to heart.
Yes.
Only our formal solicitations.
When you have a solicitation, yep.
Okay.
Now, we're not just doing it with formal bids, though. We even have it on our quotes. We have a little statement that says something about the IRAN investment, and this is the link, and you certify on that quote. So we're even doing it on our quotes over 5,000.
Overachiever.
I've been called that before, Brian. I don't know why. Good question though, because we've run into that debate.
Legal's behind me, we don't do it.
Yeah. So bid and award approval. So certain state agencies, TDOT being one of them, they want to see your bid before you put it out, and they want to approve it, and they want to see your award before you make it. I know on some TDEC money, we've had the situation where TDEC has said they haven't required, Jim, that just happened to you, didn't it? They wanted to see the award before you made it, right? Not the bid though. Yeah.
I've heard that happening lately.
Jim, was that on the truck?
Streamlining.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim was buying a truck. It's like a hazmat type truck that we're buying for our solid waste department. And so they had to approve it before we could award it.
Yeah, I've had to do that.
Oh, we have that.
Yeah. So be aware, again, back to that thing, know what your agency requires. Because we've run into where we're like, whoops, we didn't know that because guess what? They didn't give us that darn grant document. And we didn't know that requirement was in there.
When you say bid, do you mean what the contractor vendor gives you?
No, I mean
or-
the solicitation before it goes out.
Okay.
Yeah, TDOT approves those.
Can we
Oops,
go
sorry.
back one slide?
We certainly can. We're back.
Sorry, I was.
You're fine. You're
switching the
digesting.
switch. On the drug-free workplace, what are the categories of purchasing where you require that?
We do it on any of our formal solicitations.
But
yeah.
even
The
for
state laws
products?
say,
or-
It's only
construction
construction.
are more for construction.
Yeah, it's really geared
Construction.
toward construction.
Is
On
that-
site.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, on site.
Labor, yes. It's a requirement by the state, if you have 10 or more employees for construction, you have to have the drug-free workplace.
Construction, okay.
But we put it in a lot of other things besides just
We do
construction.
some, but we're not required to, right?
Right, correct,
That's an option.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't, like, for buying software, somebody's gonna do a software implementation, we might not do that. But if somebody's gonna do, which I know Boyce has been working on our financial, like our banking
Yeah.
services, we might want the drug-free in that one.
If they're gonna be on site.
Yep.
Possibility.
Thank you.
Good question.
It really comes down more, in my mind, to anything than, what's your liability? Somebody getting hurt and so forth because they were under the influence or something.
Or releasing information.
Or fouling up your whole project because they were under the influence.
But you gotta tell them they have to be drug-free to work.
Yeah, but so, and I don't know if y'all are having this, I know in talking to some of our officers, we have a hard time sometimes hiring new officers. Because it's kind of hard to find people that can pass the drug test.
I think that TCA is more than just your employees don't do drugs. I mean, I say that because I had a vendor.
Oh, yeah,
contact
it's
me when
very
I did
involved.
one.
It talks
Yeah.
about the whole
And they
program that they
said,
have to.
You have all these requirements. And he said, well, I want a bid, but we don't have an established program where we meet all these requirements.
Yeah.
But we do have a drug-free policy and we do drug tests.
Yes,
So there's like 6 other things that this requires that my company doesn't do.
right.
Can I still bid? Janice? So, I mean, Janice and I went back and we actually just took that form out of my solicitation. We posted an addendum that said I'm taking that form out so
Yeah.
that they could honestly bid for my solicitation
Yeah.
without signing that form. Because they said, we don't meet all these requirements.
And that wasn't state funded.
And it was not state
local
funded, it was
match.
a regular, old,
Yeah.
$30,000 project that was, I don't know, for widgets or something.
Yeah.
But point is, that says more than
Oh, yeah.
a drug-free environment. They
Yeah,
ask for all
no,
these other
it's a whole
requirements.
program that you have to have set up.
Just
Yeah.
like you have.
Just like we have at the city, yeah.
Just like you have in your own.
Yes, correct. Okay, we talked about that.
So I would say kudos to
go
that contractor for calling you and.
Yeah.
Because he
a lot of
actually read it,
contractors
yeah.
will just sign the darn thing and be done with it.
Yeah.
And he went and found out, oh yeah, we don't do all of these things.
On that, I know that because we have to have approval by them,
Uh-huh.
that, and it takes them sometimes lengthy, that we will take it to council and it'll state,
Yep.
pending
Pending.
approval by TDOT, this will be awarded to this person.
Yeah. Yeah, TDOT, I mean, we've had projects that have taken years to get approved through TDOT.
Right, but usually, sometimes it's 45, 60 days, but we go ahead and, so once we get TDOT, we
Yeah,
don't then have
then
to
you
take
can
it
move on.
canceled, yeah.
Yep. That's true. Yeah, that does it can turn into a real, when we were doing, wasn't that Cumberland Avenue? Took so long to get TDOT approval.
Yeah,
Is it that one?
sometimes right away
Yeah.
acquisition for work.
So on most construction contracts, we do retainage because we want to have some leverage and make sure we don't release all that money until we've made it through the punch list and everything is done. TDOT says you cannot do that. TDOT will not allow you to withhold retainage. Do y'all know that? Yep. Yeah, I don't like that rule, but it's their money, so okay. Okay, so closing thoughts. Again, know your agency requirements. That's the key. Big key. Make sure you're getting those copies of those grant documents because that will help you. Any other questions, thoughts, discussion? Oh, I did really well on time.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you to Penny, everyone.